The influence of culture on the perception of love. In a small town in the state of Wyoming, where endless fields and mountains stretched out, there lived a young man named Jackson. He was a typical representative of his generation, dreamy, full of hopes and aspirations. Every morning he got up at sunrise to pursue his favorite pastime, photography. Jackson loved capturing the beauty of nature and the moments of his friends, but his heart was free and he dreamed of true love. One day, during an art show at a local gallery, Jackson met Emily. She was a girl from out of town who had come to the show to see the work of local artists. Emily was bright and energetic, her laughter sounding like a melody. They started talking and soon realized they had a lot in common. Both loved nature, art, and dreamed of traveling. Each day, their connection grew deeper. Jackson began to realize that Emily wasn't just a hobby, she had become an important part of his life. They walked together on mountain trails, explored the surrounding forests, and shared their dreams. However, as with any love story, obstacles arose. Emily grew up in a family where love and relationships were expressed in other ways. Her parents were open and emotional, and they often talked about their feelings for each other. Jackson, on the other hand, grew up in a more reserved family where expressions of love were through actions rather than words. This difference in cultural approaches to love began to create misunderstandings between the two. One day, during a romantic dinner, Emily decided to open her heart. She told Jackson how much he meant to her and how she wanted him to share his feelings. Jackson, however, was miffed. He loved Emily with all his heart, but he didn't know how to put it into words. He felt that his reticence could get him into trouble, but he couldn't change the way he had been raised. After dinner, Emily left, leaving Jackson deeply confused. He realized that his fears and cultural attitudes were preventing him from building a relationship. He fell asleep that night thinking about the importance of learning to open up and be vulnerable. A few days later, Jackson decided to step up. He gathered his photos that showed their moments together and wrote a letter in which he tried to explain his feelings. He admitted that it was hard for him to talk about his emotions, but he wanted to change it for their sake. When Jackson arrived at Emily's house with the letter, he was filled with excitement. She read it, and her eyes filled with tears. It was the first time Jackson had let his emotions out, and Emily felt his sincerity. They discussed their differences, and it only strengthened their bond. Time passed, and their love blossomed. They learned to understand and accept each other's cultural differences. Jackson became more open and emotional, and in turn, Emily began to appreciate actions that showed he cared. Together, they created a unique dynamic that combined elements of both of their upbringings. A year later, as they stood on top of one of the mountains with a stunning view of the sunset, Jackson finally found the courage to say, "I love you, Emily." In that moment, he realized that love is not just words but actions, understanding, and respect. This story of Jackson and Emily shows how cultural influences can shape the perception of love. They learned to overcome their differences and find common ground, which led them to a deeper understanding and love. Love is not just a feeling. It is an art that requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to change. Jackson and Emily became a living example of how culture can influence the perception of love and how true connection can be built on mutual respect and openness.